Hey guys, what's up? This is Jonboy Meyers, and for some of the best comic shop news, check out bleedingcool.com.
So let's start.
Yeah, let's do this.
Hey, this is Marco Lopez with Bleeding Cool News, and I'm talking to Jonboy Myers.
Hey,
John.
what's up?
All right, so the first thing I want to ask is, and I ask this to everybody, just what made you fall in love with comic books?
Dude, I love comic books. I think I grew up on war comics. My dad was in the military.
Oh, my father was too.
Yeah, he's MP, so we always brought war comics home from the station because, you know, like GIs would be drunk and they they give them stuff to read. And my dad would bring those comic books home for us, and so I grew up reading like Weird War Tales and Unknown Soldier. And my favorite though was like Creature Commando and what was the other one? Unknown Soldier was another favorite. But Creature Commandos was good. GI Robot was another favorite of mine. And then then one day my dad brought home a Captain America comic, which was I think the Captain America Bicentennial. It was drawn by Jack Kirby, and it was Captain America versus Magneto and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, like Mr. Peepers. They have the claw hands and stuff. And it's the first super comic I had ever seen, and I was like, what is this? Oh my god. And from that point on, I started doing my own comic books, and a movie called The Black Hole had come out. I'd seen Star Wars and I liked it, and then this movie called The Black Hole came out right after that. I watched that and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool, because I love robots. So I used to do my own Black Hole comics and then sell for like a quarter.
Not entrepreneur already.
Well, not really, because it took me like 2 weeks to draw something and you turn around and sell for a quarter. At least I could buy a comic book, you know.
True.
So, because back in the day when dinosaurs ruled the earth, you could buy a comic for a quarter. So,
Those. Those days are long gone.
Yeah, long gone.
How did you get your start in this business?
I started out as a marketing director for a company called MB Creations. They did all the He-Man stuff back in the early 2000s. So, did a lot of marketing stuff with that, and did that for almost 2 years, and then decided to leave and try my hand at drawing, because I always drew. Like, I'd stand in those big long Marvel lines, you know, San Diego back in the day, from when I was 16 on, just, you know, standing in those long lines to get ripped to shreds, you know, like, you suck, you know, I ended up, I left MB and then went back home to Colorado, put together some Marvel samples, and 2 weeks later I got a call from Joe Quesada and C.B. Cebulski offering my first job on Spider-Man.
Nice.
Marvel Age. And then they told me I was like working on a book with Mark Brooks, and I was just like, oh, this Mark's so much better. I was just like, oh shit. I was like, okay. I was like, damn. But I was so happy though, you know. So.
Let me. So one of the things I love about your art style is the dynamicness of it. There's that type of the art that like you have, and I just finished interviewing Sanford Green.
Oh, right.
That type of art, it doesn't really. It seems nowadays, at least in my opinion, doesn't really get. I don't want to say a lot of play, but it doesn't. You know, I used to think that art. At least I remember back in the '90s, used to be more in the forefront.
Yeah, people call it '90s. You got a '90s style, which is kind of weird, because I'm like, I don't.
But it always seems like it's a negative tone, because like when people talk about the '90s, and I'm like a lot of good things came out in the '90s, and a lot of good starts in this industry happened in the '90s, like Oni Press, and companies like that.
Yeah, thanks, man. Make me feel better now. I don't feel so bad. Like when I first started, like guys like I grew up on who I loved, like Michael Golden, Jason Pearson, Scott Campbell, Joe Madureira, Arthur Adams. Those guys are like my main guys that like influenced me the most. Like I wanted to be like these guys, so it had such a big impact on my style and how I drew things and what I did. And I think Joe's especially, because Joe's stuff is so dynamic and it moves, it has a lot of energy into it. I'm just like, oh, you know, this is like
it's that manga anime influence that that really energizes the story.
Yeah, it really was. Like Joe's stuff was, I think, really. I think those guys I mentioned are really just kind of like innovators in what they did. They brought something new to the game that wasn't really there before, and that's just something that resonated with me. And in my mind, you're always kind of like everything I drew. You're kind of always like you'll talk to every artist about it, so you're kind of like chasing a ghost of something you think, or somebody who did a piece, or an artist you thought was great, and you kind of always measure your style against theirs. Like, you know, like, hey, you know, is it as cool as, you know, like this piece that Jeff did, back in the day, or this composition that Michael Golden did is as good as that. And those are the things I'm always kind of like basing it off of, like, hey, it's as good as this in my mind, or it's not. I think just as style-wise, I think there's been a kind of a polar shift in styles of comics these days. Like for me, I'm all about energy and dynamicism and stuff like that. Those are things that I like. But usually in the nature of comics now, like artists get shorter and shorter developmental periods where they actually get a book done. You know, because honestly, if they thought we could do a book in 2 weeks, they'd give us 2 weeks to do a book. You know, so I think artists have had to like scale with those time constraints now. Like trying to hit a book sometimes on a monthly schedule now. There's a lot that's actually working against you nowadays.
I feel they should. I feel the industry should start developing, and you can see it happening, but I feel like they should start developing more of a mixture of the old American model of, you know, monthly issues, and then also the European model, because the European artists, they get like a year or two to do, you know, a 48-page story, and the I don't know if their pair scale is the same or better than ours, but you know, it seems like here it's more like you have to do that monthly grind. I know some artists eventually it tires them out.
Yeah, it does. It just, there's so many things that play into that question, because when European comics, their distribution is a lot different. So since we switched to the direct distribution market method, you have to be on monthlies because that's the model you're on. So there is no room to really do developmental time and stuff like that. Like I think you do on key books, like I think, you know, Batman reboots and things like that, though they know they're money makers, so they can justify paying the costs on those books to get developed for a lot longer. Whereas, like, you know, books like, you know, Teen Titans or things like that, like they're a shorter, well, theoretically a shorter development period to get those books out. But everything operates on credit with Diamond, so you know, to get one book, you're basically living on the credit from your previous sales in order for new sales on this book, and that's how that model works. So you're stuck in that monthly grind thing. I think in the 90s it was a little bit easier because you had newsstand, and numbers were bigger, so money was there. So I think you could spend more time with people developing things. I think in this market now, it's really not practical to let a lot of artists do that. I can only speak from my experience, but I do notice that writers get a lot longer developmental times than the artists do, which is, I don't necessarily agree with. You know, but I mean, I that's agree just kind of the model.
I myself started when I was younger in high school wanting to be a comic book artist.
Right.
And you know, I went to the High School of Art and Design in New York.
Oh yeah.
And then eventually I decided, I was like, as I got older and I moved to Puerto Rico, I was like, I'm getting lazy with this, so I should go more into writing. So, but I come from an art background, and seeing how like the artists were treated and the system was differently for artists in the 90s versus today, you can definitely see a different shift. So when artists, you know, bring up certain things that they're like, that's not right, I just sit there, I'm like, you writers can complain all you want, but they're right, you know, with some of the things they're saying.
Well, I think the thing about it is like, it's always a personal choice, I think, because there's two things. There's like working in comics and having a career in comics, and they're totally different things. Because to me, working in comics is, you're kind of at the mercy of the publisher, whether or not they want to hire you for this and how long they want to keep you on, how well you perform. Your whole career depends on relationships with editors, and if your style is still relevant and all this stuff. Whereas a career in comics is more of being a creator, where you can write and draw your own content, you create for yourself, you can do it successfully, but you can also work for other publishers and things like that. Like, you're not dependent on a publisher to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that we're kind of coming into nowadays, where you're seeing this thing where there's not really a lot of people having a career in comics, because, you know, there's only so many publishers, so many books, you know what I mean? Everyone's working in comics because that's just the model you have.
That's true.
So if you want something different, you have to do something different, which is like why I decided, like, hey, look, you know what, like, I can always find work drawing a comic for somebody, whether it's Marvel or DC, and if they don't want to have me, I can work for Dynamite or somebody else. But if I want to have a career in longevity, I need to do something where I can also do the writing end of it, the transition, because there's really not a model out there that publishers want to have available for artists. Just in my experience, I can only speak from my experience, I'm not talking about anybody else, where I'm approaching like, hey, look guys, like, I want a bigger seat at the table. Like, you know, I've been doing this for 20 years. Like, can I help plot? Can I help co-plot? Can I eventually build it to writing and drawing? Like, is that an avenue for me? And if they usually say no, then for me that tells me that you just want me in this old system where I'm just going to be an artist cranking out.
Cog in the machine.
Yeah, it's kind of like, look, man, like I need to get paid throughout every process. Like the thing about it is creating a steady flow of income, because what I've experienced working on books is some of these development periods for books for writing it is 3 to 9 months. Like that's a long time for an artist to wait to get work. So like you're telling me I got to kind of keep myself open until this works or comes open, or you know, are you guys going to give me some work in between that until this book gets moving? So, and if they don't have any work, then you know you really want this job, you might be on the hook for that long. So if you're helping plot, co-plot, or even help write, you're getting a steady check throughout the entire process. That's creating a better cash flow for yourself. That's something you actually live on, right, for a family, for survive on.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of the model that I kind of see the trends. Like if I want to do that, then if I can't do that with a company, or if that's not even on the table, then I'm going to try to do that for myself. I can show people that I can do that. And I think once you show people you can do it, and if it's successful, then they're really going to like, oh, well, he can do this, and they're going to come back and like, okay, well, we want you to do this for us. Then at that point I can have the option to say, oh, okay, well, cool, this is how much it's going to cost, or no thanks, I'm going to do my own thing. But you kind of have to make these moves, because you don't want to be that little guy in a hamster wheel running, and pretty soon you're going to be out of steam and they're not going to want you anymore. And then what do? You do it for 20 years and nobody likes your art anymore, you know? I mean, and there's no system for like, you know, there's no real system for finding someone who's going to be the next Frank Miller.
Yeah, that's true.
Or the next Dan Jurgens, you know, because like there's a handful of guys I know who actually do it. Patrick Gleason and Dan Jurgens are the only two guys and Frank Cho, like off the top of my head, that I know who are artists.
Tony Daniels is doing it for a while, but
Tony
he had
Daniels
to stop for personal reasons.
Yeah, so those 4 guys right there, but you can't really name that many. Frank Miller, of course, who actually can transition, who do both, but later in their careers they're transitioning, especially Dan too. He's really good, really great writer, but he can still draw. But it's about creating those steady streams of income, you know what I mean? You got to kind of like...
I agree, I feel there should be, because if you look at some of the best duos, which is George Perez and
Marv Wolfman.
Marv Wolfman on Teen Titans, John Byrne, who is a writer, artist himself, and Chris Claremont. You see on the work they did together, you know John Byrne had to say with Claremont and plot and ideas, and the same thing with Wolfman and Perez. So you see, out of that thing, they did 2 of the greatest superhero runs in the history of comics, because everyone in that group that was working together got to contribute, versus it just being like, hey, the writer's going to give you the script, go draw it, have a good day.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that system, and for everybody who's in that system and that works for them, like, hey, totally cool for them. Like for me, I'm not really interested in that, because you're kind of like the equivalent of a power tool in a company's hands, or the writer's hands, or an editor's hands, and it's kind of like there's no, outside of a check, there's like nothing to get excited about. You know, it's like, okay, I'm just this dude who's going to draw this thing, and for me, it's like I need to be into what I'm drawing, and if I'm not into it, it's like I don't care.
It's true.
I'm like, I'm not gonna, like, why even do this? I have no emotional attachment to this.
Speaking of that, and given that before we started this interview we were talking about the Kirkman video.
Oh yeah,
is what you see for yourself in the future is establishing this brand, these comic books, and this thing to something that you're going to do more. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, do you see yourself doing more creator-owned versus work for hire, or?
You know, that's a good question, because like I've dabbled with creator-owned stuff before, but nothing on a large scale, and I've never done it. Honestly, I've never done it. So I just think I'm at this point where I'm tired of designing and creating stuff basically for free, because they consider all that work you do, mostly, unless you negotiate it, really, but more often than not, they expect you to do that as part of your rate, which again is not exactly conducive to living, because if I do all this free design stuff on the front end, and I'm still waiting for a writer, I'm not getting paid for doing art. I could be doing art and design for somebody else.
It's totally different from the graphic design and other.
It's not an economically sound, or even, honestly, it's not even just on a moral standard is not cool. But I mean, it's just, you can't survive off of that. Yeah. So for me, I just decided to step back and say, look, I just want to design and create for myself. And if that's successful, great, I'll keep doing that. Because honestly, really, I want to design and create for the companies I love, but I also want to plot and write or co-plot.
Yeah, you're at least like, give me a say into what's going on in this
help
comic.
me to move up to that. You know what I mean? But if you're, it's kind of like job advancement. So if you're in this career and you're great at what you do, you're like, hey man, you're great at this and you're doing this great. Dude, cool. I want to get into investigative journalism because that's where my heart and passion is. Oh, whoa, no, man. Like, you're good right here. This is where we want you, and you're gonna stay here for 30 years. And you're like, dude, man, like, you grow as an individual, and your tastes change, and you want new challenges, and you want to try different things. And I think publishers should want that. If their talent is asking to do more and wants to do more and be included on the process, for me, as an employer, I would love that. I'd be like, dude, yeah. But if that's not on the table, it's like, hey, man, like, you know what? You're basically telling me I could come back to this anytime I want. So I'm going to try this creator thing and see how it goes. And if it's mildly successful, cool, I'll keep doing it. If not, then, hey, man, I'll come back and say I did this creator thing. But, hey, look, here's some writing samples that I did. So you have this creator thing that I did. I wrote, I plotted, I did all this stuff. You guys like it? Oh, yeah, cool. Well, we like that, so we'll give you a chance on this. So you basically tell me I have nothing to lose.
That's true.
You know, so I'm like, you know, my wife's like, hey, go for it. I want you to do it. I don't think I could have done it without her support. So she's like, give me a free pass to say, hey, guys, I can turn down this work to go do it. So I was like, my wife said it's okay, so I'm going to do it. So
this early in the stage of putting out some of the creator work, is it something you've been working on for a while? Like, have you been approaching publishers?
You know, not really. Everyone's like, oh, you should go through Image, and I know people in Image, so I'm gonna submit my pitch just like everybody else. I'm gonna go through that same process. I'm no special creature, man. You know, it's just like that's cool. So I'm gonna put some pitches together. I've got 2 that I'm working on. I don't want to say anything about it yet.
It's okay.
But I'm gonna be working on those in the next 2 months, just on the writing end, getting a good idea down, good character designs. I'm gonna put together a 5-page pitch, send both of them out, and see what happens. So
awesome.
Yeah.
A couple things. Second to last thing is, what do you think in this industry is missing, and what do you think this industry could do more of?
I think what's missing is an audience. Since we shifted to the direct market, it kind of imploded the industry to a certain. What's the word I'm looking for? Maybe not imploded is not the right word, because mom and pop shops are great.
Yeah.
I think it changed the
narrows
it kind of narrows what you're doing. So as a business person, like, you're saying that your entire business is reliant on 5,000 plus or 6,000 or 10,000 plus comic shops around the world, which for me is just like, okay, so I need to make sure these companies or these mom and pop businesses succeed, because if not, I'm done. That's a huge responsibility to do. Whereas you need to open up to other avenues. You know, they could do digital better. They could create a better distribution system. Not to knock Diamond, and Diamond's great, but Diamond is pretty much a monopoly. So you're kind of at the mercy of a direct market to a company that is pretty much no competition. So you're kind of at the mercy of their prices. So at any time they could change their prices or change their rates. And I'm not saying they would do this.
Oh, yeah.
They're a great company. But what I'm saying is it's kind of a dangerous thing. It's kind of like if you're addicted to crack and there's only one crack dealer in town,
you're going to pay that price.
You're kind of like, hey, well, guess what? Crack is just costs like 10,000% more. You're kind of like, well.
Have you seen what Alternative's doing with the whole newsprint and the $1.50, and they basically got newsstand distribution?
I think that is a great model, and I think you should open up to that model, and you should open it to a digital format model. You need to cultivate many different things. It requires more investment on the company end to create those things, but in the end, it's about creating a net to where you can market to a wider audience, because the thing that they need to wrap their minds around, and I don't know if they've done this or not because it's so wrapped up into this monthly distribution thing, is if you create digital content online, if you just say, look, if you subscribe to all our comics online for $50 a month, you get it all on. Mm-hmm. Or if you let's take that model even further. If I were a company, and they've probably already done this, I'd approach Pepsi and Tide and things like that, and YouTube say, look, if we run your commercial every 5 pages or every this, it'll pay for these books.
Yeah.
Give it away for free. you're going to get an explosion of free readers, because then the more readership you have, the more you can charge for advertising on your special book. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree.
And then people are getting content for free that they can interact with and have more fun with. And if they want a print copy, then you could say, okay, cool, print copy, do this. And you're still supporting the mom and pop retailer shops. I know if you gave free content, it might kill those businesses. I'm not saying there's a perfect model here, but there's a way you can do it to where you have to reach out to a wider audience. And right now we're really not doing that, because the model we're in doesn't necessarily cater to that, because how many comic shops are within walking distance of a school or from other things, or how many parents would even want to go into a mom and pop shop to bring their kids? So we have to cast the net wider as an industry. I think that's the thing, is we have a shrinking audience, and how do you build that audience up? Because we're creating comics for a very niche market. And for me, I'm not interested in just creating comics for a 35-year-old reader. I want to create comics for everybody that everybody can enjoy, and that's my thing. It's just like always trying to like when we did Teen Titans, I'm like, hey guys, look, this book cannot look like every other book that's on the rack. They're like, why? I was like, look, if this book looks like Justice League, people are just going to pick up Justice League because it has Batman in it. If this book looks unique, has a unique voice, looks high quality, and you know what I mean? Like, it looks like something that's different but good.
Should have that energy that you see that fans are so big of the cartoon.
Right.
It's not translating into the comic.
Right. It's just something that's like, you got to give some people different product. Books cannot always look the same on the rack, because if it does, then people are going to like
miss stuff, because everything looks
going to miss stuff.
homogenous.
You're fighting for dollars here. So if you make the book awesome and unique looking enough where it has its own voice, people are like, oh, you know what? This is different from any other book. I like it. I'm going to pick it up. I'm gonna go on a limb here. I'm going to spend that extra $3 to buy this book. You know what I mean? So I think we could be reaching out to a different audience. I think we could diversify in the quality that we're giving people. You know, that goes back in the planning stages on comics. So there's so many things that could be done. But, you know, I mean, like, these companies, they only have X amount of people, and they have budgets to work in, and you just can't facilitate that. So, you know, I mean, it's just, I mean, to be quite honest with you, if Diamond raised their rates, literally overnight, like, you'd see so many companies fold because they can't afford to do it.
I always told my friends, if comic books ever get to $5 an issue, I'm done.
Well,
I'll just go graphic novel after that, or digital.
Yeah, the thing about it is because this is why comics raise, because if rates raise with the distribution, or more shops close, that's fewer people are ordering books, then you have to charge more. And that's why when people complain about rates being jacked up, because there's that science behind it, they don't really understand. And that might be something good for Bleeding Cool to say, look, this is why things go up. Is because, like, if shops close, fewer people are ordering those books. If distribution rates, costs go up because of the price of gas, or unionize or whatever, you have to, that cost has to come from somewhere, and usually the consumer has to pay it. So it's all these things that factor into, like, why comics are priced that way, why comics look a certain way. It's all these things that go into it. It's crazy, man. And it's just like, and usually the artist gets the blame for it. It's like, why that book looks like crap, or why was that guy getting a fill-in artist for that?
That's the thing, like, the one thing I noticed is, because I've done writing for, like, Line Forge and Zenoscope.
Sure.
And the one thing I've noticed is that, I remember when my Zenoscope issue released, and I was like, don't read the reviews, and I read the review, and then you see people talking about stuff that you're like, you don't know what happened behind the scenes.
And you can't say, well, you can't really talk about what goes on in comics usually, because then you end up getting blacklisted, or you're like a problem person, in air quotes, and you're just like, look, you know, it's just, there's things that happen, there's scheduling things, like, you know, there's not an ideal schedule sometimes. They make the decision last minute, so like, hey, we're going to double ship this month, and then they don't tell the artist, and they don't get the artist on the book until a month before you go to press. What do you think is going to happen? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just like, it's all these things. But, you know, a lot of people are like, I understand, everyone armchair quarterbacks, it just kind of, it stings a little bit. You're like, dude, that kind of hurt my heart just a little bit, man.
And for me, I was just like,
I'm a fan too.
This is my first print work, and it's killing me.
But, come on, man.
But I want to thank you for letting me interview you. Before you go, I just want to let the audience know where they can follow you on social media.
Oh, sure. You can find me at www.jonboymeyers.com is my website. You can always Google me, Jonboy Meyers. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Jonboy007 on Instagram and on Twitter, too.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, man.